I guess Derek and Jayne, you guys are in Hong Kong too, right?
Yes.
Yes, in Hong Kong. And Minesh is in Hong Kong as well.
Minesh in Hong Kong as well. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Just as well that just as well that this is an online event. Otherwise, it'd be blown out by the Typhoon 8 yesterday.
Right. Okay, we are live right now. So we are live on YouTube. We are live on our networking platform, swapcard.com. And I'm happy to introduce the next panel. So the topic of the panel is innovation and investment opportunities amid COVID-19. And I'm happy to introduce panelists and moderator. So all my good friends. So Max Tech, the chairman and founder of Nature Ventures. Jayne Chan from Invest Hong Kong, head of Start Me Up HK. Minesh from BuyHive, CEO and founder of BuyHive. And Derek Quick from Brave Soldier Ventures. So Max, it's your word, so please start the session.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you very much. And thank you to the panelists here today with us. Maybe we could just start by asking each of you to just give a deeper introduction of what your role, your position is, and what is it that you do on a daily basis, so to speak. We can start with ladies first, Jayne.
Okay, thanks ever so much for having me on today. Sorry, I keep having to adjust my camera. It's one of those that just flops on top of my computer and it keeps moving.
You're looking fabulous, Jayne. You're looking fabulous.
Thank
you don't need to be adjusting the camera.
Thank you so much. So I head up the Start Me Up Hong Kong team at Invest Hong Kong. Invest Hong Kong is a government department helping overseas companies to establish here in the city. And I specifically look after the startup team. On a day-to-day basis, what I do is to basically promote Hong Kong internationally as a tech hub. So, you know, prior to COVID, we used to travel a lot. We used to participate in a lot of overseas events. We used to meet different entrepreneurs, different stakeholders, and basically tell them about the opportunities here in Hong Kong. The other roles are obviously to support those companies when they're actually here, and that means anything from advising them on, you know, applying for work visas and opening bank accounts to connecting them directly with potential clients if it's relevant, or investors if we see a potential match there. And finally, the last role, and probably the one that sort of takes up an awful lot of time of ours, is on the building of the startup ecosystem. So it's all well and good introducing all these people over to Hong Kong, but if you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the clusters, you don't have the networks here, you know, sooner or later these people are going to have to move elsewhere. So we try to do our part in terms of the government side to try and support the startup ecosystem here.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks so much for giving us some insights into your role at Start Me Up in Hong Kong and the government initiative from Invest Hong Kong. Moving on to Derek. Quick intro of what you do in terms of what Brave Soldier Ventures is all about.
Sure. I've been born and raised in Hong Kong, and was part of the startup community very early on when it was in its infancy. So I'm very thankful with the Hong Kong government and with Jayne in terms of helping to build out that ecosystem, which is much more robust than it was when I first back in the late 90s, early 2000. So my work has been investing in startup companies since the late 90s. First generation of internet companies, specifically in Hong Kong and in Asia. Been in the space for a long time now. I've counted roughly around 20,000 business plans and pitches that I've been involved with. It sounds like a big number, but if you read 20 business plans a week for 20 years, you get to that number very quickly. And I also speak at a lot of tech conferences, travel around the region, meet lots of interesting founders and entrepreneurs and other stakeholders in the industry, and really enjoy the time that I've been spending doing this lately I've been doing a lot of work in China, but of course, with the pandemic, I haven't been able to go there as often as I'd like to. But I travel to the Greater Bay quite frequently, more specifically to Shenzhen, almost on a weekly basis, going to factories, seeing a lot of really cool electronic gadgets being built.
Fantastic, fantastic. And Minesh?
Thank you, Max. So I am the one who gets benefit of services from Jayne and Derek.
All right.
Yeah, I'm a poor startup which just started middle of COVID-19. We started
Mhm.
this year. I left my corporate world life last year. Actually, was organizing a conference called Startup Launchpad, where I met Ivan and Jayne and Derek. They all spoke at my conferences as well. But now I'm a startup founder. We started the company 1st of January with a lot of help from InvestHK in setting it up and getting it off the ground and making a lot of initial connections for us. It's been 10 months of the company. We've done about $8.5 million in revenue, and we've done a net profit of about $1.25 million US dollars. So we are in good shape. We're now a team of about 15 people. On a day-to-day basis, as the CEO, I am managing the business, bringing in new business, at the same time expanding the solutions. Our startup is, we call it a sourcing as a service solution startup, and we provide three batch of services. One, a freelancer network of sourcing professionals who do sourcing for on behalf of buyers, something like an Upwork of sourcing. We do a platform, an e-commerce platform where the vetted suppliers can sell their products, and value-added services such as logistics, 3PL services, insurance, etc. And finally, a turnkey, what we call as D2D, which is discovery to delivery service of sourcing. So those are our services that we offer.
All right. Awesome. Awesome, Minesh. Well, congratulations for turning a profit. Startup and a young startup like yours, as you say, it's just a year plus, and turning a profit with that kind of revenue is awesome, fantastic. I'm sure Derek will agree with me because we are both from the investment community. To find startups that can turn profit and build revenue traction like you do is just fantastic. So congrats on that. So we've got entrepreneur.
It's all been possible because of the support from InvestHK.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, we'll come into that a bit more later on. So we've got entrepreneur, we've got investor, venture capital investor, and we have, I guess, government-linked organization that supports the entire ecosystem in Hong Kong. And Minesh, you talk about how Invest Hong Kong has been supporting you, so it's fantastic. And all four of us are in Hong Kong, so we just went through Typhoon Signal 8 yesterday. Fantastic day to rest at home. So let's quickly move to the topic that we are faced with today, which is innovation and investment opportunities amidst COVID-19. How has COVID-19 changed the way you operate or you do your business? Let's start with Jayne. You talk a little bit about traveling, but how else has it changed?
So, part of this role, Invest Hong Kong, we are very much the front-facing part of government. So we really are the ones, interfacing with the marketers, so to speak. And actually, being based in Hong Kong and being part of Asia, you probably understand this, a lot of things are still done face-to-face. People still prefer to do, discussions, meetings, and things like that. So this whole COVID, has obviously taught us to do things in a very, very different way. And, we're learning like everyone else. But it's surprising, though, how quickly you can adapt and that you see the benefits of the different types of activities you have to do, whether we're talking virtually or whether we're actually being a lot more creative in terms of reaching out to stakeholders. So one of the things that we've done on a yearly basis, for example, has been the Start Me at Hong Kong Festival, and we've been running this, and this year was the 5th anniversary. And over the years, we started off, it's a week-long series of events. It's usually on in January, February. And what it is like a whole week of different types of industry sector-focused events organized by thought leaders in their respective space. So we're talking smart cities, which are retail tech, data analytics, you can imagine it. And over the years, we've built like a pretty, regular kind of audience. And last year, our physical event attracted about 20,000 people. Now, this year, obviously, we couldn't do the physical event, and we basically had to do 3 times to, first by postponing and then moving to a virtual platform in July. And, although there was tons and tons of learning, I mean, kudos to all the people who run fantastic virtual events. It's not an easy task, actually, especially if you're trying to do this at scale. But the benefits are quite phenomenal as well, in addition to obviously being able to record and play back, so the end user actually gets a lot more out of it. For us, that virtual reach meant that we hit over 180,000 attendees and about 450 speakers from 97 different territories or countries. Now, prior to this would not have been possible. So you are having to adapt, but with it does come benefits as long as you really have to prepare. I mean, there was, so many things we didn't prepare for, but I think just the learnings going forward would be great. So lots of ideas like this, and having to do things in a much more of a creative kind of process, and obviously, with a government hat on as well, we are also constrained to a certain extent by, security issues and things. So, very beneficial time, actually, and interesting times.
Sure. Fantastic. Okay, so moving on to you, Derek, you talked about previously traveling very frequently into China and the region. Clearly, I used to fly 150, 200 flights a year, weekly, for my business as well, and that's ground to a halt completely. I've not flown since February till now. So how has it affected what you do?
It's a very interesting point, because I think a lot of the investment business has been impacted in terms of the way it conducts its business, the way it does its due diligence, so on and so forth. I think for the past 6 months, we've all been sort of struggling in terms of like, how do we invest in this particular asset class, which are early stage companies, obviously high risk, and a big component of that is the due diligence part. And
Absolutely.
As a people-oriented business where you have to have face-to-face interaction with potential companies, and the inability to travel actually makes it quite challenging. So I know that a lot of the business practices are moving online, like let's say with video calls, but not everything can be done by video. Being on a Zoom call, for example, and speaking to a founder who's looking for investment, and there's only so much you can review in terms of documentation, of just sending documents back and forth. But when they hold up a product in front of the camera and go, you see this really works. It really writes. It's like, okay,
that touch and feels, right?
I believe you, but I still need to see it, touch it, feel it. Or the founder that says, you see the factory behind me? That's mine. I showed you all the documents. You still need to travel there and see it for yourself. So that type of validation actually makes it a difficult one to actually close a transaction. If the transaction is ongoing, just the process of trying to close that is extended because of the inability to travel, and just trying to get creative in terms of trying to, perhaps someone who's living in that country, they can actually go there and see it for you. So you have another set of eyes there that can help with that. So that type of thing has been quite interesting and challenging. But the other part of it too is that a lot. I mean, for me as an older person who's sort of been around the block a few times now, I've kind of seen different economic cycles and how they've impacted the way investments are done. But never has anybody experienced this type of disruption at this magnitude, where it's really a global disruption. It's not so much a regional one. So the traditional ways of evaluating an opportunity, or even the traditional subsectors within technology that you would look at, I think it requires a reset in terms of how you look at opportunities. So in some of the trends that we've been noticing is that there's been an acceleration of existing trends, where before it was more of an idea, and now it's just been fast forwarded to the front, because now is the time to try that, because of forced experimentation. Everything is in some way forced online, but not everything works online. But it only you can only tell if it works or not if through trial and error. So things like remote medicine, does that really work? Education, well, education online, it might work for older kids, but it certainly is not as effective with younger kids. Things like VR or work from home. Some people can work from home by the nature of their jobs, and others it doesn't work. So that
let me come back to you later on that particular few items that you talked about just now.
Sure.
Clearly, the whole world is going through a paradigm shift with the COVID thing. In 9 months, we've had 38 million infections, over 1 million deaths around the whole world, and the new norm is beset upon us, and everybody's working very differently. Moving on to you, Minesh, how has that changed how you operate? Has that actually benefited you in a way, or has it actually made it more challenging for you?
Frankly speaking, I think if COVID was not there, we won't be successful right now. And I'm a firm believer that every challenge, every disruption is an opportunity for you to grab. And those that can see the opportunity, those that can take advantage of the situation are the ones who are going to take benefits as well. To Derek's point, what he was talking about, the disruptions have been accelerated and technologies have moved towards us. What we see, my customers are retailers who sell on Shopify and Amazon and eBay, etc. All of these are now starting to not come to trade shows, not be able to buy the way they used to do, not be able to visit factories like Derek is not able to visit factories. And many of them will not be able to do that for the years to come. And that's why they need a trusted solution. In our case, the biggest opportunity for us has been created by the likes of platforms like Alibaba, which have scams and scandals on them, and people don't trust them. So they need opportunities. People like us will come in and say, we take responsibility, we take accountability. We don't have fine print which says we are not accountable. So that's the opportunity that is there for somebody like us in our space. But across the ecosystem, in the same way, this is a time where you as a startup are put in the same group as some of the established companies, because the large organizations during such disruptions are not going to be able to move as quickly as startups can. And the loopholes or the disadvantages of them can be magnified or multiplied to the advantage of startups across sector, whether it is logistics, whether it is fintech, whether it is sourcing in our space. There is a lot of opportunity that I see in each of these areas. So I think I'm excited about the future.
Yep. Well, like you said, and Derek also shared just now, e-commerce clearly one of the segments that's been pushed much more. It's been doing well, but it's been pushed much more to the forefront because of the pandemic and online education, like Derek mentioned. Derek and I kind of in the same industry, so we kind of look at the same thing and see the same trend. But there are clearly certain industry segments that have benefited and done better in COVID than others. Clearly, the travel industry, hospitality has been hit really, really hard, and F&B too. But coming back to you, Jayne, in terms of what you looked at, you've got the ecosystem of companies, coming into Hong Kong that you try to bring in. How has that spectrum changed with COVID and before COVID?
So, you know, one of the things that we are constantly having to do is to basically look at what makes sense for Hong Kong. I mean, obviously, you know, as one of the community builders here and as I suppose at the front line of government in terms of its interactions with startups, we do have to see what's happening here, play to our strengths, obviously. And there are some structural kind of inherent strengths like, you know, the fact that we are on the doorstep of, you know, a massive market, which is mainland China, but we are the only kind of like common law jurisdiction within the context of that. I mean, that is a fantastic opportunity. So these are much more longer term kind of things that we need to play to our strengths. And so in terms of messaging and in types of the companies that we try and approach, we try to let them know about the opportunities. For example, the GBA, you know, Derek mentioned that earlier, and this you know, it's common knowledge to us here in Hong Kong, but internationally they don't know that the GBA comprises 9 cities within southern China plus 2 special administrative regions, which is of course Hong Kong and Macau, and collectively this is an opportunity of 71 million people and a GDP of 1.3 trillion. It's a massive opportunity, and startups, when they hear this overseas, especially if I haven't heard it before, it's like, wow, this is super exciting. And the fact that we get to be in somewhere like Hong Kong, where I suppose it's just a little bit more international, the English is spoken and things, to land in a place like this and basically be able to take advantage of all of that. I mean, this is a rhetoric that we do have to put through, and there's some other areas as well. But we do constantly have to look at what's happening, you know, circumstantially and also around the region. So as and of itself, Hong Kong is a market of 7.4 million people. If you're an aspiring startup, there's no way that you'll just concentrate on a market this size, even though in some cases, some startups are very successful just looking after this. So we need to look at the market opportunities through Hong Kong. And of course, I mentioned mainland China, but it's not just mainland China. People use Hong Kong to basically go to other parts within Asia as well. And within ASEAN, we've developed a whole bunch of free trade agreements and things with those kind of places. So we need to constantly look at what makes sense for them and how can we leverage their opportunity for us. So, you know, so the message is actually not as straightforward as you think it is. It's actually quite nuanced. And when something like COVID hits, you know, we interface with a lot of different people. So investors, corporates, you know, other kind of community builders, accelerators, incubators, co-work spaces, and of course, entrepreneurs themselves. And the kind of like story that we're getting from them is obviously changed quite a lot, and that reflects what we do. So for example, on the VC side or the investment side, we speak to a lot of investors, both on the corporate side, as well as you know, the smaller VC companies and the family offices. And now we're getting family offices approaching us who ordinarily wouldn't even look at innovation technology. It's not an area that they're traditionally hugely comfortable with, unless you know, you're talking a select few, and Derek will probably know this really well, and you probably know this really well too, Max. But suddenly they're coming up to us and saying, like, you know, we're really interested in food tech, and this is one of the areas. So when someone says, you know, we're really interested in food tech, and you're getting that message on a regular basis, then you think, okay, so there is something here, and this COVID has probably triggered some of these kind of things. I mean, the things like the e-commerce and edutech is probably almost a no-brainer with this environment in terms of like how good it potentially might be. But something like food tech is not something that jumps to mind instantly. But of course it is related, because suddenly people are so much more aware of the health. So our message then is like, okay, so we've got this kind of situation where we're not being able to meet the demand, and we know that connecting startups and investors together here in Hong Kong is beneficial for the startup development in Hong Kong, and therefore beneficial to the Hong Kong economy. So how can we make this happen? So this is where we start reaching out to various markets, like Italy, for example. I went to Italy a few years ago to this fair, this exhibition, startup exhibition fair, and it was predominantly food tech, amazing companies, stuff that's been done in Italy. So now you start thinking, okay, so how can we leverage that? We basically start thinking about webinars to try and reach out to that kind of audience. So it's a lot of these constant adjusting and development and thinking, okay, where are those opportunities, but being able to take advantage of those opportunities when they arise. So a bunch of these different things that we are constantly adjusting our strategy for. I mean, I could go on, but I'll probably take up a lot more of your time.
All right. No, fantastic. Thank you, Jayne, for sharing on the GBA thing. I think it's a fantastic perspective to be able to tell people that Hong Kong is kind of like a launching pad for you to the whole GBA, which is 10 times bigger than Hong Kong standalone. So looking at Hong Kong alone may not be attractive, but looking at GBA would make it something more interesting for people to say, come start up my business in Hong Kong, use whatever Hong Kong has to offer, and then launch everything into the GBA kind of thing. Fantastic. Over to you again, Derek. You were talking about investment strategy and some of the new opportunities and things that's come out from the pandemic. You want to develop that a little bit more?
I think in terms of areas that I think are interesting, I actually have quite a long list, but in the interest of time, I'll just talk about a couple of them. But sometimes you may not, during this pandemic like this, it may not necessarily be right to look at specific verticals or sub-verticals, but more along the lines of like horizontally looking at different types of business models. I'm very big on anything that's 2.0 of anything. So e-commerce 2.0, retail 2.0, anything that's 2.0 I think is interesting. More specifically, I like things, I think in respect to security as a umbrella word, physical security, because crime and terrorism are never going away. Digital security, because hackers and viruses are never going away. Health security, because the next virus is coming, so we have to prepare ourselves for that. And then lastly, in the security space is disaster recovery, because no matter how much you prepare for the first three, something is going to fall through the cracks and you're going to need someone to fix it. So that, I think, is one aspect that I think is interesting.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Minesh?
On the same topic, I think my view is Hong Kong, frankly, I mean, to add to what Jayne said, Hong Kong is also a gateway to the rest of Southeast Asia. Hong Kong is 5 hours by flight to most of the Southeast Asian countries. And I think there is a huge opportunity there that also exists for Hong Kong. And to Derek's point, I think the opportunity that we will see, like what we are doing is sourcing platforms 2.0 to what Derek was saying about 2.0. But across the sectors, I have come across so many startups that are here in Hong Kong that have great ideas, great opportunity for growth because of the situation with China and because of COVID. Both of these present some new set of opportunities, and investors and the ecosystem needs to look at Hong Kong in a very different perspective. We have interesting opportunity that needs a lot of seeding. So we are lucky, we don't need much of seed money. We have our money plus the money from the sales. But a lot of the startups in Hong Kong need some good incubators, accelerators, international ones to actually support it. Singapore has done an interesting job at that. And Singapore government is funding a lot of these startups as well. And maybe Hong Kong can take a page from there. And I know Jayne and the team is working really hard in that direction. They need probably a little more support from the Hong Kong government, and we could take a huge opportunity ahead for the entire ecosystem here.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting that we are all kind of seeing the general trend, other than industries that's like right smack in the middle of the pandemic, clearly, the PPE guys, the mask guys. Other than these guys, outside, there's that whole cluster of companies, particularly e-commerce. We talk about ad tech, we talk about, Derek talks about security. There's a whole bunch of companies that suddenly has come pushed to the right, right in the middle of the growth industry that previously they may not have been as the focus of investors like venture capitalists and the rest. So that pandemic has clearly moved digitization a lot faster. And I've had a lot of folks who tell me that, you know, in their life they've never used a video conferencing before. Now everybody has got Zoom sort of at the end of their lips, so to speak. So even people are changing and to adopt to this new norm that we're all facing. We're running out of time, guys. I think we're almost time's up, but just quickly, maybe spend a minute, each of you, to talk about how the pandemic has actually changed your life, not so much business, your job, but how your lifestyle has changed. Minesh, starting with you.
For me, frankly speaking, it has been the same. I'm still working 16 hours a day. I'm doing more Zoom calls than I ever did, and I'm doing more business than I ever did. So actually, not much has changed. It's just made me busier.
All right, Derek.
The pandemic has actually made me appreciate the opportunity for human contact, of just meeting someone for coffee. That is, it's a special treat to be able to do that. And
Oh
I'm so
yeah,
happy.
I miss that a lot too.
Exactly. I just love that.
Yeah, Jayne.
Mine is probably an extension of Derek's, actually. It's just so many things we take for granted normally, and suddenly it's when it's gone that you suddenly realize, oh my goodness, you know, I really miss that. I miss traveling home. In my case, it's in Scotland where my family are, my parents, my siblings, and now where my son is as well. He's just started studying over there at university, and it's I can't even see him and do things. All these kind of things we take for granted, and I think it does make you appreciate what you've got and make the best of what you've got at that specific moment in time. If it's not working out, and I know this is easier said than done, do something about it. I mean, just don't wait, because you know, you just don't know what's going to happen around the corner.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, for me, like I said just now, pre-COVID, I do 1-2 flights, sometimes 3 flights a week, and now it's just completely stopped. And you know, the thing I miss most is my traveling. That, you know, I go to wherever it is that I go to, I get, you know, enjoy my food, foreign food, not
Yeah,
have the
Airplane food, no, you
yes. So all those travel, the fringe benefits of traveling, so to speak.
I'm missing my miles, Max.
Absolutely.
I'm missing my miles.
Your miles, yeah, absolutely. That's one more thing, yes. So as final last words to the audience and people who are listening to us, there are loads of guys who are struggling out there, lots of businesses. You know, I ask a lot of people in the market, and the line is typically 70% of businesses suffering, 30% still doing okay under this pandemic right now. So to those guys, the 70% guys who are suffering out there, what advice would you give them?
Maybe I can
Derek?
start. I would say
Jayne, yes.
specifically, yes, sorry. I would say in terms of startups, it's one thing that they don't leverage so much. It's actually their government or their chambers. Make a case to lobby for changes. And a lot of startups don't even think about joining chambers. They're actually incredibly influential in a lot of different places. So leverage what you can, and obviously if the government is providing any means of kind of support, financial or otherwise, take it with, you know, with both hands, and just try to get through this time, because it's a tough time.
Absolutely, thank you. And Minesh?
I think my main thing is that it is not as dire as everybody makes it seem. And I think of it as opportunities everywhere. Grab those opportunities. Don't get negated by the situation. As I said in the beginning, every challenge is an opportunity, and I just see opportunities everywhere.
Finally, Derek.
Yeah, I think I'm more along the lines with Minesh, where I guess it's the way I look at things is to be more inspirational about problems. So yeah, it's tough, but at the same time, it's tough for everybody. So you shouldn't be a special case of it being tough. And in life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. So you really have to just take that challenge and turn it into a positive.
Thank you, fantastic. Panelists, fantastic. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all your sharing, advice, and I hope that the things that we discussed here today would be beneficial to a lot of guys who are listening to us and those who'll be watching the video after this this talk is over. Everyone, thank you again. Stay safe, stay healthy, and good luck to whatever you're doing.
Thanks, everyone. Let's get coffee here. Jayne,
thank you very much. Yeah, the two things I'm really missing is traveling and real meetings, like for coffee or for drinks or for like this meetups, meetings, conferences.
Ivan, you can meet me at the 7-Eleven anytime.
I know.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, bye now.